You can't bullshit your way to become disciplined.
Today, we are very lucky to be here with Ankur Warikoo, India's top content creator and serial entrepreneur with a hugely successful exit at Nearby.
The pro is the amateur who showed up every day. Roger Federer was not born Roger Federer. He became Roger Federer from where he was as an amateur with all his weaknesses and all his misdoings. It's the belief that failure is a muscle, and like any other muscle, it needs development and it needs stress.
You've stated that it's actions, not thoughts, that decide your luck.
Not everyone is an entrepreneur.
I can relate. I just got a new job, as I told you before the interview, and it took me about 50 applications till I finally got a yes. So on that front, I can relate. But maybe for the general public, it's easier for them to imagine someone like me as a 20-year-old. It's easier for them to imagine me failing. But for someone like you, who's obviously hyper successful, maybe it's harder to visualize you failing. So I suppose my question will be to help illustrate the situation. When was the last time that you failed?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because it's always hard for me to answer this. I often get asked this question: when was the last time you failed, or what was the biggest failure you've had in your life? And suddenly, when that question is posed in that way, the word failure seems much bigger than what it is. Because in my head, failure is very different from a loss. It's almost like if you're playing a sport, any sport, competitive sport, and if you were to lose that match, it's not a failure. You didn't fail the sport, you just lost that match. Failing is when you would just say, you know what, I can't go on anymore. I give up. I want to stop trying. I want to stop moving forward. And by that definition, I'd like to believe I've never failed. I've lost far more times than I can count. But I don't think I've ever failed, because whatever hit me, as hard as it was, I managed to get out of that. But if I were to use the loose definition of failing, or at least things not going my way as I had wished for or planned for, it was as recent as 2020 when COVID happened. And everyone went through their own experience of what the pandemic did for them. And for me, it was very interesting phase, certainly not expected or desired, where I just stepped down as the CEO of my last startup, which was Nearby. And that happened at the end of 2019. I had been at that startup and in that industry for nearly a decade. I'd spent some wonderful times, learned a lot. And I thought that it was time for me to move on, to do the next thing. I was turning 40 in 2020. So I felt that that would also be a nice moment to have a decade to look forward to doing something different. And as luck would have it, in 3 months of my so-called break of discovery, March 2020 happened, and the entire world went into a lockdown with no clue of what to expect and how things would be. We all thought it would be a matter of weeks, and then it turned into months and then years. And during that period, I had no income because I wasn't working anywhere. All of my capital wealth had been invested in my startup and other startups. So I had nothing on paper in terms of actual cash. And I had a family to support. I have responsibilities and all of that. And in that moment, it just felt like, how could a 40-year-old find himself in this spot? Like, how could somebody who's gone through all the right checks and balances of a good pedigree, great experience, working with smart minds, being thoughtful, being deliberate, just find themselves in this complete mess where they have no income coming in, they have no bank balance to support their family, they're staring at bankruptcy, and now they have to start their life all over again with the responsibilities that come with a family and everything. And that certainly felt like this was not how I had planned. And this certainly wasn't how it should have been. And I remember in that moment, the thing that liberates you the most is getting rid of every social construct that either you have imposed on yourself or the society has imposed on you. What I mean by that is we all have this identity that often gets built without our choice of who we are. Here you are this top grader. Here you are this great worker. Here you're this good-looking person. Here you're this best friend. Here you're this fantastic trader. Here you're this wonderful sportsperson, whatnot. And we begin to believe that, to imagine that, and to become that, very rarely establishing who are we truly inside, outside of our designation, outside of our status, outside of even our name. What's our core identity? And once you believe that that core identity is what matters to you, it's immensely liberating. And I figured about 4 years back that my core identity was that I want to be as good a father as I can be to my kids, as good a partner as I want to be and I can be for my partner. And I just want to teach. I want to teach as much as I can. And I've always been a teacher and I've loved teaching and I love breaking down complex things into something that's simple and consumable. And if I can get to play these 3 roles for the rest of my life, I couldn't care less how much money I have, what people think of me, where I stay, what car I drive, how much money I have, and everything will just still make sense. And once you have that clarity, I certainly did, it just made it so easy because now you were not competing to fight the next status game. You were not competing to win the next million in your bank balance or anything like that. You were just playing a very different game for everyone else. Very different game. And I played that game. And as luck would have it, I stand here with a very different outcome that people find it easy to quantify. Oh my God, he's earning this much and he has this much and he has these many followers and blah, blah, blah. But again, as I said, I couldn't care less. All of this could vanish tomorrow and I would still be the same person that I am, very content with where I am because I get to play the 3 roles that I care about the most.
Thank you. We're going to move on, I think, to the authenticity part and finding yourself just in a second. But if we can just stick on the success part for a second, restarting at 40, no cash, must be difficult, especially for somebody like me. You kind of have a burning desire to get out into the world, make your mark and everything. You might have felt like, okay, I've started this company now. I've invested here and here. I've made these achievements and yet I have to restart. And I think that's why in your book, for example, Do Epic Shit, and in many other places across all your content creation, 2 big things for you are motivation and discipline. But these are words that get thrown around a lot on the internet, and they can often mean quite different things to different people. So how do you differentiate between motivation and discipline? And what strategies do you think that people should use so that they can harness them effectively?
That's a great question. I go back to what Mel Robbins once said, and I love her for what she said. Motivation is garbage. And I totally believe that. Motivation, in my opinion, is garbage because it's the worst friend one can have. If you really think about it, for doing all the shitty things in life, you would never need motivation. Like never has there ever been anybody who said, I wish I had the motivation to sleep for an hour more. I wish I had the motivation to drink more, to eat more. I wish I had the motivation to not go to the gym. I wish I had the motivation to just laze around and doom scroll my Instagram feed. Nobody ever said that. But somehow we need motivation to show up at the gym. We need motivation to work. We need motivation to eat right. We need motivation to call our parents or to be good friends to our friends and be the able partners for our partners. And if that thing were a real person who would always be there when we are getting sloshed, wasting our time, completely getting wasted, but would never be around when we have to do the meaningful things in life, we would hate that friend. That would be a really toxic friendship to have. But we love motivation and we feel that that's the best friend we can have. And I do believe that a lot of people have a toxic relationship with motivation because they haven't yet figured it's the one reason why they haven't moved ahead. So for me, everything is discipline. And what I mean by discipline is you do what works for you every single day. What works for you is extremely important because what works for me may be different from what works for you, will be different from somebody else's what works for them. And finding what works for you in the manner that it works for you and doing that every day is how life ultimately unfolds itself. I have a favorite quote from my book, Do Epic Shit, that says, "The pro is the amateur who showed up every day." And I love that because that is how things are. Roger Federer was not born Roger Federer. He became Roger Federer from where he was as an amateur with all his weaknesses and all his misdoings. And he just showed up every day, every single day. And that's same for every successful individual that you would want to name. So for me, discipline, consistency. Now, where does that come from? The only way that you can ensure that you're consistent in life, that you're disciplined in life, is that you're doing something that's authentically you, which goes back to it works for you. You can't bullshit your way to become disciplined. You can't pretend or fake your way to become disciplined. You can fake it till you make it, but you can never fake it to be disciplined. And that for me is a key distinction, because I hear so many times people writing into me saying, hey, Ankur, I had this fantastic routine. I was doing really well. I was showing up and I was going to the gym and I was reading and I was meditating and all of those nice things. And I was going for 3 months or 4 months. I was like absolutely killing it. And then the cousin's wedding happened. That's it. 5 days, my routine's gone for a toss. I can't get back to it. And I'm like, bro, if you can't get back to your routine, it was not a routine. It was just something that you had designed for yourself to believe that it was a routine that works for you. Because when was the last time something worked for you and you didn't want to do it, or you struggled to get back to it? If it works for you, you will automatically do it. You were just forcing yourself to do it. And that is the clincher. Because just like a spring, even if you were to stretch it, it'll come back to its original shape because it was working for you.
Want your head and hair to feel cool and clean? Been going to extreme measures to cool your head off? Then get yourself a Manscaped. Don't be like Ollie and take your scalp from 0 to hero with the new scalp buffer now. Use the discount code LOAF to get your 20% off.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that short clip from our interview with Ankur Warikoo. If you want to see the full interview, click right here. But most importantly, don't forget to like and subscribe, because that helps us to keep getting guests like this and keep bringing you good content. See you guys next time.